Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Perplexity, a mystery podcast. As always, I am your host, Kaydra, and today I'm joined by a very special guest. I have Cassidy Liston from Drinking the Koolaid Podcast.
Hello, everybody. What's up?
So happy you're here. It's really awesome to have you. Had Amanda a couple weeks ago. So
Yes, and I saw she had her cute little dog moment, pets moment.
yes, I wanted to pick something like lighthearted, cute, and fun for Amanda. And yeah, it was a
That's
lot of
a good
fun.
idea because she be crying. Like, let me tell you, she
Yeah,
will cry like immediately.
there were definitely some moments in there where I was like, we might make Amanda cry because the Oscar the hospice cat part of the episode is about like end of life and taking care of like patients and their
Yeah,
final moments. And so it's like we might.
we
There
might
was
lose her briefly.
there was one point I like cut out because she was just sitting there like this and I was like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And I ended up like just cutting it out of the episode. She was
You're like, how bad am I traumatizing you right now? Blink twice if you need help.
So, yeah, everybody, this is Cassidy from Drinking the Kool-Aid, one of my friends. Definitely check out their podcast. And just wanted to like plug the Patreon really quick because it's still pretty new. And I have some creepy stories from the internet going on there right now. The Daughters of the Cult coverage should come out either this week at the time this episode drops or the week after. And I have the Hell Camp documentary coverage on there, some personal stories. It's just $3 a month. So definitely check that out. It really helps me keep the show going. I got my merch links in the episode description. Get you some cute merch. And I think that's like all of the just general housekeeping things. But I picked out this story today because, we were talking about sports earlier. Cassidy loves sports and is pretty good at talking about them. I am not. So I'm a little bit nervous because this is my first sports episode. And then we were also talking about how we love an underdog. And
Oh, absolutely.
this is an underdog story. So I think that's part of why I love it so much. So today, Cassidy, I'm going to tell you the story of Jann Mardenborough and the Gran Turismo Academy.
Is this the one that they just made a movie about?
Yes.
Okay, I haven't seen the movie yet, so I really don't know the story that well, so I'm excited. Okay,
We'll
cool.
talk about the movie a little bit at the end, and that is what introduced me to this story.
Cool. I'm excited.
So, I have a lot of sources that I used. They are all down in the show notes. So many sources were used today. I'll cite a couple throughout the story. I don't think there's any trigger warnings today, but me and Cass enjoy our fair share of cursing. So move
Yeah.
along if you don't, if that offends you, move
Sorry,
along.
guys.
This podcast isn't for children. Okay, so Jann was born September 9th, 1991, so he's a Virgo. And he is from Darlington, England. His parents were Steve and Leslie. And Jann had really big dreams, but like a lot of teenagers, he lacked direction. He didn't know what he wanted to do with his life. His dad had been a professional footballer for 13 years and then retired, and his mom was a nurse. And Jann was the oldest. He had a younger brother. But Jann, from a young age, like from when he was around 8, loved cars. So he knew that he wanted to do something with cars, preferably racing, because he just loved the idea of being behind a powerful machine and being able to control
Horrifying.
it. He's a big car guy. I
So
could
scary.
never.
I think,
So
yeah. Oh, I
scary.
think driving should be illegal. Genuinely feel that. I do. I think it should be illegal to drive. It's too scary.
Well, this is going to take it to very much the
Yeah.
next level.
You can jump on a horse and buggy. That's fine. But do not put someone behind the wheel of a car. It's too dangerous.
Yeah, I mean we'll get into it more, but I had no idea. Like obviously I knew it was dangerous, but I didn't know how much went into it. And I mean, I have a lot of respect for racers now because I was like, wow, this is so crazy.
It's much more physical than people realize.
Yes, we'll talk about that too.
Yeah.
As he got older, his family relocated to Cardiff, Wales, and he loved video games. So in his free time, he would play a lot of Gran Turismo, which is the movie about his life that just came out last year, is called Gran Turismo. So it's based on his life and this game. So basically, Jann had no experience yet with driving race cars. He was just a teenager, but he really wanted to do it. And this game, it was like this competitive online gaming racing simulator. And there were multiple versions of this game, like Gran Turismo 1, Gran Turismo 2, 3, 4, 5. He owned all of them. He played them religiously, and it was for PlayStation. It was produced by a guy named Kazunori Yamauchi. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Sorry if I said that wrong. But they do like a little teaser of him at the end of the movie talking about like the making of this game. And what's so cool is that this game is, and I mean, this is what they say at least, it's the most accurate to real life racing.
Okay.
They 3D map everything, including the tracks and the cars. They really study the mechanics and the hydraulics of everything, the physics of all the cars. So when you're in this simulator, it's supposed to, I guess as close as you can, mimic being in a race car.
Okay, so I was gonna say it's more like a simulator than a video game. So like,
yes,
obviously they can make stuff pretty accurate. They have like flight simulators and helicopter simulators and all that stuff.
exactly. It's interesting because like you can buy it on PlayStation just like a normal video game is my understanding, but they advertise it as a simulator. And I watched a couple of interviews with Mardenborough, and that's what he always says. He's like, it's a simulator.
Yeah.
So he had like,
you're not just like playing Mario Kart over here.
no, he had like a steering wheel like attachment that he used and stuff. So it's really cool. But he would play this game over and over. He logged like thousands of hours playing this game, and he got really, really good at it. And because of that, he learned a lot about just how cars worked and racing, and kind of memorized these infamous tracks because, again, they 3D map these famous tracks that real life racers race on.
Yeah.
He was insanely good at this game. He beat people from all over the world. And when it was 2011, he got an invitation from the Gran Turismo Academy. And so the Gran Turismo game basically created this academy a few years prior to when they invited Mardenborough. And they were like, you know, we're going to take our top racers and we're going to teach them to become professional race car drivers.
Oh, so they were like, hey, we're confident enough in our simulator that we think that these people could actually be like top racers.
Exactly.
Wow. Imagine if they did that with Call of Duty.
Oh my God. Wow. Yeah.
Sorry, I played probably 12 hours of Call of Duty a day when I was in high school. I'm not kidding. I was a huge gamer online for great. And as I'm saying this, I realize now, like, absolutely they would have let me join the military and pretended like I was good because of Call of Duty. I am realizing that as I say
it. they needed bodies.
They were like, sure, babe, you're 5'1", you have crippling anxiety and depression, and you're flat-footed, and also everything else is wrong with you. Sign up.
We'll give you a crazy, like the
Mustang.
I can't remember some specific examples, but I know I've heard before that you can get disqualified from the military pretty easily for like even like minor vision issues or like minor health conditions. They're like, goodbye.
Yeah, I had a friend who really wanted to be in the Air Force because his dad was, and he was like colorblind or something, and they were like, nope.
Yeah.
Get out of here. Which, like, I guess it makes sense. There's probably colors up there, but
wild.
I was just like, really? Like,
there's colors there.
You should take what you can get, man. Like, no, people aren't exactly rushing to sign up for the military anymore.
True. Oof.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot we could get into with that, but
you're like, that's a whole other episode, girl.
It sure is. Okay, so basically, Gran Turismo Academy reaches out to Mardenborough. I don't know exactly how, but he got a message from them and they were like, congratulations, you're one of our top racers. We want you to compete in this ultimate online racing contest. And if you do really well, like if you're one of the fastest racers, then we'll invite you to our academy and we'll train you to become a professional racer. Jann would later say about this in an interview, quote, once the academy kind of presented itself, I believe in fate. I was in kind of a darkish place in my life, dropping out of uni when I was 19, living at home again. And in January, February 2011, I was kind of on a gap year, and then this appeared online. So he was working in retail. His parents were not happy with him because he dropped out of university. He was just, it's not for me. I don't know what to do.
There, brother.
Yeah.
Parents not happy with you? Relatable.
Well, it worked out perfect for him. Like in his mind, he was like, this is a perfect way to segue into my dream. But of course, like imagine if you told your parents that you were going to do this. You know?
Yeah, you're like, hey, mom and dad, I wasted so much time on a video game. They're gonna put me in a video game university. Aren't you proud? And they're like, geez, Louise, but should we just try for another one just in case this one doesn't work out? Should I get pregnant right now? Is that what
Yeah, Jann said that his mom was very supportive, but his dad and his brother were basically just like, whatever, dude. Like they did not think that he would go far in it. They didn't take it seriously. But, you know, the academy invites him, and the academy had been going on for like the last few years. It started in 2008, and finalists were selected from these online trials. And then the finals, which was like the real life racing, was the Silverstone circuit in the UK. The finals were a challenging experience. The contestants would face all these different obstacles and challenges to kind of just prove their racing skills. You know, they wanted to kind of vet them. And Jann would become a top 20 finalist in the 2011 GT Academy competition because he beat out 90,000 other competitors.
Jeez Louise.
He was really, really good. I was watching an interview with him on YouTube today, and someone in the comments was like, yeah, like way back when he would play this game, allegedly, he was like, I raced him on Gran Turismo and he was insanely fast. He whooped my ass. Like, he was really, really good.
Yeah, so, he was like memorably good.
So the same year that the Academy held this big race, which was sponsored by Nissan, they picked, you know, the best racers from around the world, but ultimately Jann won the race against all of these like finalists that they picked. So he started to transition from gaming to professional racing, but obviously this wouldn't be an easy transition. So for those of you who are like me and don't know much about sports or professional racing, turns out there's a lot of training and physical exercise that is required to be able to do something like this, and mental training.
Okay, there was like a Disney Channel show or movie about Formula One racing.
Okay.
Like where a chick is a Formula One racer. I might be making this up, but I swear to God,
this isn't Herbie like, Fully Loaded, is it?
No. It's like from when I was in like junior high. So this had to have been like, 2005.
Okay. I don't know.
And she was like a racer, and everyone would make fun of her, like, oh, you're not a real athlete. And then I remember this like one specific scene where she was like, you get thrown back against the seat because you're in, whatever, it's like 2 G's of force pushing against you. And while you're doing that, you have to make sure you're maintaining the torque on the thing. And she's like describing it to this guy who's making fun of her. And she's like, do you think you could do all that? And the guy's like, no, I'm sorry, ma'am. And I, once again, could be making this up, but I swear to God, it's a real thing. And I remember that scene every time I'm driving. I'm always like, 2 gigs of force or whatever. I always maintain the torque on the wheel.
This is so, like, obviously this is so much more intense than like normal driving, but in driving school, I remember my instructor told me that like if you are driving 60 miles an hour and you crash into a car that's going, I'm going to explain this so badly, but if you crash into a car that's going like 40 miles an hour and you hit each other head on, it basically like, I guess physics wise, like combines that force and makes it so
Yeah.
much more intense. So that's why it's so important to be mindful of like distance and speeding and stuff like that. It's so dangerous.
I just looked it up. I didn't make this up.
Okay, what's it called?
It's a Disney Channel original movie called Right on Track,
Okay, I've
and
heard of that.
it's based on the true story of Erica and Courtney Enders, who were drag racing sisters.
Okay, okay.
I was like, this has to be a real thing. Literally, as you're describing all of this, I'm like picturing this film in my head.
You need to watch this movie. It to me it's really good. There was
Okay,
some
I'm definitely gonna.
controversy. There was some controversy about it, which we'll kind of briefly talk about, but I really enjoyed it.
You
So,
know I love some controversy.
some tea. To become a professional racer, let's just kind of briefly talk about some qualifications because I didn't know any of this and I feel like a lot of my listeners might not know. So, you have to, of course, develop driving skills. So, you're like religiously practicing at tracks, you're using simulators, you have to improve your racing techniques and reflexes. These cars are also typically manual, which takes an extra level of skill to drive. I've never driven stick. Have you, Cassidy?
I tried to learn how to drive stick when I was in high school. My mom had a VW Bug that was stick, and she tried to teach me. And we literally stopped the training sessions because she was like, "You're gonna destroy my car. Like, you are so bad at this." And I was like, "You know what? Fair, real." And then now my boyfriend has a old 1979 Dodge truck, which is
Yeah.
so cute. I love it. But it's stick and it's like old style stick, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna teach you how to do it." And I was like, "All right, good luck, brother."
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm the same way. I've never driven stick and I feel like I would be so terrible at it. Even just like driving a truck before scared the shit out of me. So imagine like driving stick going 200 miles an hour
No,
and
absolutely
like
not. Not for
sharp
me.
curves. No. So, in addition to all the driving skills you have to develop, there's also a lot of physical fitness required. Endurance and physical fitness are absolutely crucial because of the extreme conditions that the racers experience during races. The training routines typically include exercises like running, cycling, and resistance training because you have to prepare your body for the demands of like a long race. You have to get a competition license. You have to usually join a racing club because then that gets you access to events and resources. You have to, of course, obtain a car equipment, which is extremely expensive. I started watching just the first episode today, but it's about Formula One racing. It's a documentary on Netflix and it's called like Drive to Survive, like Formula One Drive to Survive, something like that. And they were talking about how the playing field in racing is not level at all because there's like Mercedes and Audi and like these incredibly wealthy companies that spend millions of dollars on a car and they have teams of like hundreds of people. So when you're like coming up and in these smaller teams and you only have, maybe a quarter of their budget to spend on a car, it's not exactly a fair fight. So that's kind of
Yeah.
what his experience was. Like, yes, they had money and funds because it was Nissan, but it was nothing compared to like Ferrari, Audi, Mercedes.
Audi, yeah. That makes
So,
sense because like I grew up riding horses, and
okay.
so it's very similar. Like obviously, the horse you have is as good as you're gonna do if you're like in a barrels and poles competition or something. You know what I mean? Like if
Yeah,
you have some old ass horse that you got third hand from someone, that's gonna be different than that like perfect stallion. It doesn't mean that you can't win on it if you're really good, but like also, it's not an even playing field. Like most things, it's like it depends how much you can spend on it.
exactly.
I mean, even like football or swimming or whatever, like, I don't know if you did sports at all like growing up, but there were the kids who could afford to be in like a club, right? Like
Right.
in a soccer club, in a swimming club, whatever. And there are the kids who couldn't. And like the kids who could, they were getting trained all year long. So yeah, of course, they would come
Yeah.
into the season ready and better than last year. And then there were kids who couldn't. And it was like, yeah, they might have swam down at the Y a few times, but that's not the same thing. And so you get an edge up. Money, money,
Yeah.
money.
I did gymnastics for 14 years and then I did cheerleading for a couple of years. So I used to be like six pack, really skinny.
Yeah.
And my sister did like volleyball and stuff. And yeah, I remember they would have like sponsorships for some kids, but you know, most kids in those situations, they just don't do it. I don't know how accurate this is, but in the movie, Jann Mardenborough's family was like struggling a lot financially.
Hmm.
So like they would have never been able to have funded him to do something like this. It was
Yeah,
all
they're not going to be able to afford a race car. Are you
no.
joking? It's so hard to afford a normal car.
Yes. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay, so I thought this was really interesting. This really like puts the physical endurance into perspective. So there's this professional strength and conditioning coach named Alex Stott, and he did this interview and he was talking about just how he has to train race car drivers and what happens to their bodies. So he said, quote, a racer's heart rate in a race will be average between 140 and 170 beats per minute. So that's similar to a jog for like 2 hours. And it can peak up to 205 beats per minute before the race even starts and at key points in the race. He also talked about how drivers can lose 4 to 11 pounds of fluid in their body over the course of just a 2-hour race, depending
Man.
on the environmental conditions. And then he talked about the G forces, which you brought up earlier. So he said head and helmet combined weigh roughly 14 pounds under the loads of 5 to 6 G. So I guess that's the G forces. So during each braking event or when you're turning a sharp corner, the neck muscles have to resist 66 to 79 pounds. And then when you're pressing the brake, it can be up to 220 pounds of force. So basically, all of this to say, Stott puts it into perspective saying that professional racers experience G forces that are greater than those of NASA astronauts when they're taking off into space.
I feel like I remember that from that movie, Right Track. I'm not kidding you. You got to watch that. I'll watch Gran Turismo. You watch Right Track.
Yes. Okay.
On the right track.
It's probably on Disney Plus.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So obviously insanely intense. And then when I was watching that documentary this morning, the racers also had like this kind of plastic brace that they would put around their neck. And then it had like this tall piece of plastic behind their head. And I'm assuming that's for like neck stability because of the crazy forces that they're under. So in addition to all of this training that 19-year-old Jann is now going to do, he also had this huge stigma on him from the racing community because he's a video gamer. Like, they're like, what is this dweeb doing driving these race cars? The average racer also, I looked this up, is between like 38 and 39 years old. So he was super young. You know, people train for years to do this kind of thing. Also, people were like, is this safe? You know, speculating just, you know, his qualifications essentially, because he did have to learn really fast. And additionally, Jann is a biracial man with a Black father. He didn't look like a lot of the other racers.
Can I look at the pictures or the first picture you
sent? Oh, yeah,
me?
go ahead.
Because I think you had a picture of a dude. I'm assuming that's him.
That's him, yeah, the first picture.
Oh, he is so handsome.
He's so cute.
He's so cute.
My dad said he looks like TJ.
He does kind of look like TJ.
And the actor that plays him in the movie, like, very much resembles him. It's the, shoot, what is his name? It's like Archie Madekwe from Saltburn. The guy with like the big hair. He plays him in Gran Turismo.
Oh. And he's so good in Saltburn. So I bet he's just like amazing. What a talented actor.
Yes, really good. So Jann does talk about this in an interview, like how prevalent white men are in racing. And I thought this was interesting. He just kind of talked about the history briefly, which I did not know. So basically, NASCAR was born out of World War II because all of the men came home. A lot of them were like flying planes and wanted like thrills. And so NASCAR was essentially born from that. And then, of course, those people would pass that knowledge on to their kids. So a lot of white men in this industry.
Money, as we know, white
Yes.
people, because of the slavery, Jim Crow, all of the fucking shitty stuff that we've done to black people in this country and other countries, white people are just more likely to have generational wealth. So they're more likely to be able to afford a really expensive car and a hobby that is really expensive, you know?
Right. Yeah. And Jan had kind of like a very level perspective on all of it. Like he was on this show with two Black American men, and they were like, what's it like being a Black racer? And he was like, listen, I've never really had those experiences for myself. I've never really noticed the difference, but here's like the history. And he talked about World War II and all of that. And he was like, my dad, though, as a Black footballer, had a huge stigma on him in the 80s and 90s and had a lot of those racial experiences. So it was interesting. But, ultimately, either way, the odds for Mardenborough were very much stacked against him, but he trained really hard with the academy. He was trained and mentored by this engineer named Richard Davila, who is in the movie. Not him, but an actor portraying him. And Davila was basically the first engineer who treated Mardenborough without any kid gloves. He was like hardening him up, and he was like, listen, this is extremely dangerous. You need to know what the fuck you're doing. And Davila had a background in racing. He was like a really, really good racer. So he trained him, mentored him. He had been in this
isn't
sport.
A video game anymore. This is real life. Yeah.
Yeah, and he had experience, Davila, in Formula One, which is like the most intense, the fastest. So he wasn't fucking around. He played a significant role in Mardenborough's life at that time. So the other thing, too, is Jann had to train really, really quickly. They gave him 6 months, which is not a lot of time at all, because it's 2011 and the Dubai 24-hour race is coming up. And this was a huge deal. Everybody was basically like, this is one of the biggest races to compete in. You have to do this. You have 6 months. So after 6 months of professional racing training, it was time for Jann to take part in his first big race. And it was an endurance race, 24 hours. So it takes place at the Dubai Autodrome, and like I said, it lasts for 24 hours. There's no breaks. It's literally 24 hours. You do work in teams. Jann had a team of 4 drivers, including himself. So you drive around like 4 hours and then swap out with people. And then I guess you sleep in between.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, do you just pee your pants?
I wondered that too, actually, because, yeah, if you're driving for hours and then they have to be really hydrated because they're losing all these fluids, I feel like you would have to pee your pants.
Yeah.
I don't know.
There's definitely been at least one adult diaper in this in this situation.
I'm sure if you like Googled that, they'd be like, oh yeah, we wear adult diapers or something.
Yeah.
So unlike a standard race that is more about speed, this one's a lot more about reliability, fuel efficiency of the car. It was 5.39 kilometers and had 16 insanely sharp turns. This race is very famous for its challenging and competitive nature. Basically, any big racer has to do this race and has to do Le Mans, which we'll talk about too. So with his team, Jann ended up securing a podium place. They finished 3rd in his class. And, he's just 19 years old. So yeah,
that's pretty dang good.
This is the race that made like a really big name for him. And people started recognizing him and were like, okay, this guy, maybe he's not just like a video game nerd. So after this, he really starts to build his confidence. He's still doing a lot of training. And then at this point, Nissan offered him a contract for another racing series. And then his career really started to take off. So in 2012, he competed in the British GT Championship Pro-Am class with Nissan. And he did really well. He secured 2 podiums, and he competed in some other big races that year. 2013 is when Le Mans happened. So that's like a big one I want to focus on. This is in Le Mans, France. And this track is 13.5 kilometers long. So
Oh, wow.
it's more than twice as long as the Dubai track. And Le Mans is also a 24-hour race. The arena can hold up to 100,000 people. And fun fact, the year that Mardenborough did this race, Patrick Dempsey was in attendance. He wanted to check it out.
Okay, McDreamy, I see you.
Yes. So it's pretty common for like a lot of big time people to attend these races. It's one of the most famous races of all time, and a lot of big racers do it. Also, so the average race car goes like 186 to 200 kilometers per hour. This one, the top speed at the Le Mans race was 366 kilometers per hour.
Oh my God.
And F1,
that is so scary.
It's
that
so
is so
terrifying.
Scary. Yeah.
And like I said, F1 is the fastest. And F1, they typically race around like 186 kilometers max per hour. So this is insanely fast. And again, it's an endurance race. So when they're in the car, you know, they could be in there for like 4 hours. A typical race lasts for 15 to 60 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. And then the other thing about Le Mans is the key is not who passes the finish line first. It's who covers the greatest amount of distance within 24 hours.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's like basically like how many loops can you do in 24 hours, not
exactly
who can get there the fastest.
Yeah, and if my memory serves, like the average number of loops they do is 360.
I just feel like I would fucking crash because I would zone out.
I think I would puke.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
There's usually around 60 competitors. They all race at the same time, but they're all in different classes. So they'll have like Formula 1, Formula 2 on the same track. So they had LMP1, LMP2. I don't know what any of this means, full disclosure. LMGTE Pro and LMGTE AM or AM, all on the track at the same time. So on average, a team covers 5,000 kilometers, which is about 350 laps. So right around that amount I was saying. Okay. So basically, Jann's team ended up scoring third place in the LMP2 class with his other team members, Lucas Ordonez and Michael Crum. So that was a podium spot. So that was really great for them. He went on to do other races in 2014, did well with those. 2015 was another big year for Mardenborough that I do want to highlight. This is in the movie. In 2015, he took part in the VLN Endurance Championship in Germany. And I apologize in advance because I'm going to butcher the pronunciation of this. So it's called the Nürburgring Nordschleife. That's the race. And it was another German. Yeah. He had like his team behind him, but he was racing by himself this time. So it was more about a speed situation. He had been training a lot. At this point, he has like 4 years of experience and he's been doing really good. So he was very confident that he would do well. He had gotten a lot of notoriety in the racing community. And I think at this point he was 23. So still pretty young, but you know. So he raced in a Nissan GT3 and he had this tradition, like before he would race, he would listen to jazz music to kind of zen out. And this is also portrayed in the movie. So he's like alone in his little trailer, zenning out to his jazz music. He has a super clear head. He's ready. He steps into his Nissan. It's time to race and he goes. Everything's going really well. He is at the front of the pack. The car feels great. The track was incredibly challenging, but Mardenborough was navigating it seamlessly. The weather was clear, so it was like a really good day for him. But at one point, Mardenborough came up on this hill. And at this point in the track, it's quite steep. He was traveling at about 125 miles per hour or 200 kilometers per hour, when his car unexpectedly lifted into the air, like completely off the ground.
Wait, no.
Within just a matter of seconds, his car flies into the air, crashes through a fence into the spectator area. Jann was rushed to the hospital, and when he woke up, he would find out that this tragic accident caused severe injuries to 10 spectators and 1 fatality.
Oh. For a second, I thought he was going to die, and I got really sad. And that's still, I mean, and then now this is still sad.
It's so sad. He survives, but I mean, it does seem like this had a pretty significant effect on him. And I'm a little torn. You tell me what you think. In the interview, Mardenborough doesn't mention the spectator's name, and he said he doesn't like talking about it. And it was pretty hard to find the spectator's name online, but I did find it. So I have his name, and it's he did die. So I feel like I should mention it, but then at the same time, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, it's hard. Usually if it's difficult to find someone's name, it's because their family doesn't want it out there.
Fair.
But
Yeah.
also you don't want to be not, you don't want to be disrespectful in the way to be oh, spectator number 1 died. You know what I mean? Because
Right.
that feels super dehumanizing. So I don't really know. I also don't know about that kind of stuff because I feel like there's always 2 ways of thinking about it, and to me both make sense. So it's difficult, but the news is the news, I guess.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's in the sources if you want to dig for his name, let's say that. But it was a man from the Netherlands. He was in his 40s. I'm sure his family was devastated. And
yeah, what a freak accident.
Yeah, and he was in this spectator, I can't remember the name of the zone, but the zone he was in had a name where it was if you're in this zone, you know it's dangerous.
Yeah, it's like the splash zone, but for
Yeah.
cars. Yeah.
Yeah, and my understanding is this is the first accident that Mardenborough had ever been in, too. And again, he's 23, so a pretty pivotal age. He was really young. When he crashed, the race immediately stopped, and an emergency crew, checked on everybody and provided medical care. This was
Oh my gosh, is this the one?
Yes.
Holy moly.
Yeah, that's Mardenborough's car. I'll put these photos on the Instagram page and in the YouTube video. So my understanding is the race wasn't restarted after this too. It was just okay, we're done. It was the first fatal accident involving spectators during a VLN Endurance Championship event. So it was it's always a big deal, but you know what I mean? It was pivotal.
Yeah, totally. Because, I mean, not all the time, but obviously race car drivers die. That's how Dale Earnhardt died, right? So it's
Yeah.
that's, we know that happens. And that's kind of I don't want to say they know, you know what I mean? They know that it's dangerous and what they're doing. So it's they kind of not signed up for it, but they understand when they take on that role that what they're doing. But being a spectator, that's so different. You know what I mean? You're not expecting to be anything but sitting there.
And my understanding too is that, this was in Germany. So when Mardenborough was racing, his parents were watching live on TV from Wales. And, I'm sure they were oh my God, is my son dead? I just can't imagine.
And the excitement of them, oh my gosh, my son isn't dead, but somebody else is dead. There's a lot of guilt associated with that too. I'm sure that he also had to deal with.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the Drive to Survive documentary I started watching, the very first episode is following this pretty young racer, and his parents are watching on the sidelines, and you can just see the body language of his mom. She's so nervous and stressed. She's tapping her feet, and she's shaking, and her hands are this the whole time. And she said in an interview, she was every race, I just pray for him to be safe.
Yeah.
That's all I want is for him to be safe. And I'm just yeah, you don't really think about the parents of these racers, but yeah. So obviously this was incredibly tragic. It is included in the movie. Mardenborough says that the crash scene is depicted very accurately to what actually happened. So it was pretty hard for him to watch when he watched it all back. In the film, the crash is also like a defining setback that kept Mardenborough from wanting to race again. And Mardenborough says that's not entirely true. He did go through like grief and everything, but he actually started racing again pretty quickly. And from what I gathered, it's like he knew that he had to. Like if he didn't get behind the wheel quickly, he would never race again, essentially.
That is so true. Like if you get like a bad injury or something that traumatizing happens, like the longer you put it off, the harder it gets to get back started. Like I feel like anybody would tell you that, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. It like he kind of took a break because he didn't do like a big race again till 2018, but he started racing again like right away. He did say in an interview, and I thought this was really sweet, just the way he worded it, at least. He was like, after this accident, me and my family like kind of sat down and had a family meeting. And now we have this rule where every time we leave the house, we have to tell each other we love each other, even if we're mad.
Oh, that makes me want to cry. That's so
I know.
sweet.
Yeah. So it definitely had an impact on him. And also, my understanding is the media was like all over this and pretty vicious. And then I'm sure people on like Twitter and stuff were just saying awful things. So
Yeah,
he
they always
did.
are.
He said he didn't like touch his phone or check social media for like months after this happened. Davila, the guy that was mentoring him, was like, this was not your fault. This literally could have happened to anybody. It was an incredibly difficult turn. And there was like a name for the curve that he crashed at. It was called Quiddelbacher Hulk, Hohe, but it's an infamous jump crest. So it's known for people
doing that
going
to
into
cars.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it was a very hard turn. In 2018, after Mardenborough had kind of started to overcome this, he starts doing big races again. He scored first podium in the class at Sugo, so another race that he did there. And then in 2019, he started doing a lot of races in Japan and was doing really, really well there. As of 2023, he has competed in top level racing series like Super GT, the Super Formula Championships in Japan. And he worked as like a test development driver for Nissan for a while. He helped make the Gran Turismo movie and kind of worked alongside the actor and the production team to help ensure the accuracy of the movie. He did the stunts for the movie, so that was cool.
Oh, that's cool.
That's essentially the story, but I thought now we could kind of get into like a discussion about just this concept of like video game simulations and being able to then do something like this. That's kind of like the perplexing mystery of this, is like, you know, how much of this was just theorizing, like how much of this was his talent, how much of it was like the accuracy of this game. Many people say that the Gran Turismo game played a significant role in training Mardenborough to become a professional racer, because of the incredibly realistic racing simulation. Mardenborough has also said that there were a couple of tracks he would do and a couple of times when he would race where he would think back to a time that he did that track in the game, and specific racing lines, like angles that he would take to cut across somebody. And they weren't like the typical lines that you would take when you're racing, but because he did it in the game and he knew it worked, there were a couple times that he would do it in real life, and it helped him make those curves significantly faster than the average racer, or like get in front of somebody. But what are your thoughts with that?
I mean, clearly the game is extremely accurate. If it wasn't, then, and I do think, you know, there's simulators for a lot of stuff. So it makes sense to me that if the people who are going into this were looking at it that way, as a simulator more than just like a game, I could definitely see how it would be helpful to somebody who has a natural talent. Because I also just do think like some people naturally are just better at things than other people. Like even if it's something that's not necessarily like an inherent, like driving isn't like inherently natural. Like we invented cars like 100 years ago. It's not like it's a human nature to drive, you know.
That's
But I
very
do
true.
think
Yeah.
that there's people who just naturally are better at random shit like that. And part of it, I think, especially with something like this, is fearlessness. And when you're in a simulator, you have nothing to be afraid of. So you can take that risk, you can take that weird route, you can do that thing. And worst case scenario, you just lose the game, right?
Mm.
And
Hmm.
so I think that once you get in behind a real car, if he already has that mentality of I'm willing to take that risk, I'm willing to do that thing to cut that 3 seconds off or to get around this person or whatever, um, I could definitely see how that would be super beneficial, especially in someone so young. You know, as we know, the younger you are, the less you think about. You don't think anything bad can happen to you when you're young,
Yeah.
you know? We
Yeah.
all do so much stupid shit. And then like the older we get, like, yeah, I don't want to go stand as close to that edge as I would have when I was 19. I don't want to go drive as fast as I would have because I'm smart. And now I realize people die and I could die.
Yeah.
Or maybe not so much.
A lot of the racers and like interviews that I've watched are like they talk about that, like the concept of mortality, and if you're not careful, you can feel like you're flying and feel immortal, and like you
Hmm.
kind of forget how dangerous it is what you're actually doing. And I mean, like you said, Earnhardt was like an incredible driver, super professional, lots of experience, and he died doing this. So
Hmm.
it is fatal. So yeah, I feel like the game, if nothing else, gave him a lot of the foundational skills and obviously paved the way for him to be able to do something like this, which is another thing that I think is really cool because, like I said, the playing field is not level in this community. So it really gives
Hmm.
other people the opportunity, you know?
Yeah, you don't need to have a $250,000 Mercedes. You can have a
Yeah,
$200 video game setup and maybe not be on the same playing field, but at least it'll put you in the conversation. You know what I
right.
mean? And I
Yeah.
think that is really interesting. But I also, so like when I was in high school, like I said, I was like a big gamer, right? Like I played Call of Duty like morning to night. It was like all I did when I was outside of school. And my dad always says that it gave me really fast like reaction time
Mm.
to things. And
Hmm.
he used to joke. So when I was driving once in high school, I had an old 95 Chevy Blazer, right? Like super old school.
Love it.
It like if you took a turn too fast, all the gas would go to one side of the car and it would stall out. Like it was just, a real piece. I got it for like $1,000. And I was driving on the freeway once and I went over a bump and the connector that kept the hood down got knocked off and my hood flew up and shattered my windshield while I was driving on the freeway,
Mm.
right, going like 70 miles an hour. And I'm like 16 and I don't even remember doing it. Like I remember it flying up at me and me being like really confused. And then like the next thing I remembered was I was pulled over, I was parked, and my keys were on the passenger seat. Like I had just like auto mode,
Yeah.
like, oh, pull over and turn your fucking car off, right?
Yeah.
And when my dad came to like pick me up and like help me or whatever, he was like, it's all those video games that got you good reaction time. You got quick reflexes, right? And like thinking about it, like we used to always joke about that, but like thinking about it, like it's probably true. Like
Hmm.
that is not a part of your brain that gets like utilized in normal life. I'm not like all the time like stopping something from falling or you know what I mean? I'm not
No.
working on my
Yeah.
reaction time, but I
Right.
could definitely see how even if just that, like he already naturally had some of these skills that just like would make him a good racer. And then these just kind of cultivated it, gave him a way to like flex that muscle
Yeah.
of being, like, what dry I don't really know what you need, but like flex the muscles that would eventually make
Yeah.
him this great driver. Like I think that's really fucking cool that a video game could do that.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. I didn't think about it that way of like the reflexes with driving and just yeah, how I have now that I think about that, TJ has never been in a car accident. And I know like correlation, causation, whatever, but he's really good at video games and plays them all the time. And he'll like follow cars closely sometimes, which drives me insane. And then he's like
Yeah.
never even close to hitting them, you know, like his control is really good. And before I played video games, I was getting in so many accidents. And now I play them and I feel like, yeah, I feel like my reflexes are a lot better. So who knows?
Yeah, it's like this weird muscle in our brains or, timing in our brain that like doesn't get used that much in real life because it's
Yeah,
like you're not just like accidentally knocking over a jar of pickles and have to catch it really quick all the time, right? That's something that happens once every 6 months. Or you're not like having to swerve out of the way because somebody runs into the street all the time. It's something that happens
right.
rarely. But then like when you put yourself in like video games or like some sort of like simulation where you actually have to like, oh, there's someone coming up on your right. You have to whip over and then whip over and with accuracy do things.
Yeah.
It does make a difference, I
Well, and
feel like. And
I think it's in the pictures I sent you, but it shows like some pictures of the trainings that they do.
I saw that. It literally
The
looks like a flight
sensors.
simulator
Did
with
you
all
see
this
the
stuff around it.
Yeah, did you see the one with all the little buttons that they have to hit really fast? They're like standing up and there's like little sensors they have to hit as fast as they can.
Yeah, it's
They
like
did that
playing
in the movie too.
uh whack-a-mole.
Yeah. Yeah, it like so they train the reflexes that way too, and then obviously like a lot of practice on the track and stuff. And then the other thing I didn't even really think about until I started watching more documentaries is they're in a different car all the fucking time. And
Oh,
they redesign these cars and they're like different models, they feel different. So basically the way that the racing is it's in three parts. So it's like Friday, Saturday, Sunday thing, and obviously Sunday is like the big racing day. So Friday is when they get on the track for the first time and they're just like feeling it out in their car. They just do some little loops. It's not an actual race. They're just practicing.
yeah.
Saturday is what's called the qualifiers. And the qualifiers, they have to make sure that like the car is qualified to race. And then also depending on their speed, when they do like these practice loops, that determines what place their car is going to start in.
Oh, okay, okay.
So if you're further back, it's because you like didn't do as good. And Sunday is the actual race. But every year, these teams, Audi, Mercedes, whatever, they're always trying to come up with the bigger, better car. So they're in new
Yeah.
cars all the time. So I'm sure that
Yeah.
makes it even harder.
Well, yeah, because driving, I mean, you get so used to your car when you have your car, and then when you drive
Yeah,
someone else's, you're like, what the fuck? Like the brakes are different, the everything's different and
right.
weird, right? And so, yeah,
Yeah.
I can't even imagine. I mean, I don't drive, I don't have a car, but I will rent a car every once in a while. Like, for example, I went back to Arizona, visit my family for Christmas, and I rented a car. And it's like, driving is so weird and scary when you don't do it all the time. You just get so
Yeah.
used to it, right? And then when
Yeah.
you don't do it and then you have to do it, you're like, what? People are just doing this all the time, every day? Like, this is horrifying.
See, and I work really far from my house and I used to work in home health too, and I've gotten so used to it. I drive everywhere. And then in like the area I live in, you have to drive. So I'm like very used to driving, but I do work in healthcare a lot with people who have been in motor vehicular accidents and have like
Yeah.
brain injuries from it, you know? So like
Yeah.
I've seen that and that definitely has like made me really think about how important it is to be safe behind the wheel. So just a
Seriously.
PSA to everybody who's listening.
Yeah. Stop driving, you freaks. No, just kidding.
You weirdos. So just to kind of wrap things up, if people are curious about the movie, so it came out last year. It is based on the true story of Mardenborough's life, and the film was produced by Columbia Pictures, PlayStation Productions also, because they made the Gran Turismo game. And it tells the story of, you know, his journey from being a little teenager video gamer to being a professional racer.
So
Uh,
crazy.
so insane. The movie stars Archie Madekwe as Jann Mardenborough. If you guys have seen Saltburn, you know who I'm talking about. Awesome actor. David Harbour plays Richard
Ah,
Davila, which I love.
love him.
I love him. He does a great job. And then there's also, so Orlando Bloom is in it. And he plays like the spokesperson for Nissan and the Gran Turismo Academy. And he's kind of like an asshole. He's basically like, does this kid have what it takes? Is he going to make us money? Blah, blah, blah. And they kind of
Yeah.
like, this is the one thing in the movie that is pretty inaccurate. I'm sure there's other things, but this stuck out to me as like, they advertise it in the movie as like they've never done this before. This is the very first year we're ever going to do this academy, but it had been going on for like the last few years. But he's like the spokesperson for it. The movie received mixed reviews, criticism for its writing, but I personally loved the movie. I thought the acting was really good. I thought Archie did an amazing job. And like Mardenborough said, it's pretty accurate to what actually happened in his life. So, and he did his own stunts. So definitely something cool to watch.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll definitely watch that. I mean, that sounds really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I really enjoyed it. And as soon as I watched it, I was like, okay, I have to do a story on this. So I thought it was great. Jann Mardenborough's journey from gaming to professional racing is a testament to the potential of video games like Gran Turismo and training future racers. And who knows, maybe training them for other things, like training them to go to space or to play other sports.
And they do that already with people who like are really good at certain video games, and they have them, the military will recruit them to do like drone stuff.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I've heard that that's a thing. I don't know how extensive it is, but I do know that that's a thing.
Well, and I mean, like, working in the medical fields, a lot of occupational therapists will help patients return to driving after injury, and they use driving simulators. So Mardenborough's success in the racing world demonstrates talent and dedication can overcome any stigma or challenge. And that is the perplexing story of Jann Mardenborough, the man who became a professional racer through the help of a video game.
That's definitely a wild one. That's crazy. I love it,
I
though.
love
That was
it.
cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, of course. Thank you also for like giving your commentary because, I was, like I said, I was kind of nervous about covering it because it was my first sports episode. So,
Hey, you did a great job.
thank you. If any people are listening who like know a lot about racing, please, you can like correct me, but like please don't be rude because I don't know a lot about racing, full disclosure. But
Be
yeah,
nice.
I just thought it was a
You
great
can
story.
be right, but be nice about it.
Exactly. I don't mind if people correct me. Just don't be an asshole.
Oh, I always say that. I'm like, I am so ready to be wrong. Like, that is not a problem. If you're nice to me about it,
Yeah.
I'll probably even like you better. Like,
100%.
yeah.
Cassidy, I had Amanda talk about this a few weeks ago, but people might have forgotten. So where can people find you guys and listen to your podcast?
Oh, yeah. So we're Drinking the Kool-Aid Podcast. We're available on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Music, or wherever you listen. You can also find our information at dtkpod.com. We have our merch on there, our Patreon, our social medias, our, ways to listen, all that good stuff. I actually remember our URL, unlike somebody else who was on this podcast who might be a part of my podcast. But yeah, so you can find any of our stuff on there, and we'd love to have you. If you like Kaydra, you'll probably like us, and vice versa, man.
So if people don't know, Cassidy and Amanda are actually like the reason I started doing this.
Oh shit, really?
Yeah, seriously. So it's actually pretty crazy. I wanted a new podcast to listen to. I got on Spotify. Y'all were in my algorithm. I was like, oh, this looks interesting. And then I just started listening to them and I was like, I love this. And I knew that I didn't want to do like purely true crime. So it was nice because, y'all do a little bit of everything, all the mysterious.
Yeah.
And yeah, the first person I ever talked to was Amanda. I was just like, hey, just wanted to let you know. I sent her like a DM on Instagram. I was like, I love y'all's podcast. Thank you. Y'all inspired me to start mine. And she was so nice. And she was just like, oh, what's it called? I want to listen. And then several months went by and me and TJ went to LA to see his brother. And I just hit them up and was like, Cassidy, Amanda, do you guys want to hang out? So the rest is history. So it's really, really cool to like have you guys on here and like, be friends with y'all now. And yeah, it just means a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That means a lot to me too. Yeah, we had so much fun meeting you and TJ, and I mean, this has been a blast. So just thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, anytime. So yeah, just to wrap everything up, if you guys want to support the show, you can always leave a 5-star review wherever you listen. It helps a whole lot. If you are watching on YouTube and you enjoyed, you can hit that subscribe button. And if you really want to support, you can become a patron. It's just $3, less than a cup of coffee, and you get tons of exclusive bonus content. So thank you guys so much. I hope you all have a great week. I hope you all stay safe, and I can't wait to talk to you next week. Bye.
Bye. Thanks, guys.